Xi Jinping's hardline position on the Russia issue, echoed by the fiery remarks of Wolf Warrior diplomat Geng Shuang, has sparked anger in the West. Recently, Geng proactively declared, "You are all so strong, united against Russia, yet the result is still a stalemate. If you can't win, it shows you're not capable." Military experts have responded by preparing some serious countermeasures for the CCP. Reuters reports that the U.S. is accelerating the testing and production of a new anti-ship weapon called the QUICKSINK bomb, designed to sink all 370 Chinese military ships. According to the Financial Times, U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6 is intensifying training related to Taiwan, potentially conducting decapitation operations in the event of a U.S. China conflict. Retired U.S. Air Force Colonel John Venable has even suggested the permanent deployment of U.S. troops along Taiwan's coast, crossing the Taiwan Strait's median line, and potentially stationing nuclear weapons in Taiwan. As a former U.S. defense attaché to Israel, Venable's remarks likely reflect some considerations within the U.S. government. According to the U.S. Naval Institute, on July 19th, a B-2 stealth bomber used a QUICKSINK bomb to split the 40,000-ton Tarawa-class amphibious assault ship in half, showcasing destructive power comparable to a heavy torpedo. The low-cost air-to-air surface guided bomb uses surplus 2,000-pound GBU-31 bombs fitted with GPS and infrared imaging guidance, making it effective even without GPS. With an estimated unit cost of around $50,000 per sample, it's significantly cheaper than anti-ship missiles, which can cost up to $1 million each. Footage of QUICKSINK's effects on target ships reveals its devastating potential. A single B-2 bomber can carry up to 16 of these bombs, representing a real threat to the PLA Navy. The bomb has a 24 to 72 kilometer range that utilizes a bubble pulse effect, where underwater explosions create high temperature, high pressure bubbles that expand, contract, and expand again, producing a powerful shock wave. And this shock wave can severely damage the underwater structure of large ships, with just 2 bombs likely enough to sink a Chinese aircraft carrier and 1 bomb sufficient to destroy a Chinese destroyer. Strategically, the U.S. aims to use fighter jets like the F-35B, F-35C, or F/A-18 with long-range anti-ship missiles or naval and land-based systems using SM-6 missiles to neutralize enemy ship radar systems before deploying QUICKSINK bombs for precision strikes. The U.S. plans to mass-produce these bombs, and while specific figures are confidential, the Indo-Pacific Command has expressed an urgent need for far more than just a few thousand. The need for thousands of these bombs stems not only from the 370 Chinese naval vessels, but also from the vast Chinese maritime militia fleet, which could be mobilized for combat, compromising thousands of ships. The U.S. is forced into this approach due to the CCP's long-standing confrontation with the U.S. The CCP has supported Russia's war in Ukraine by supplying military components and equipment, producing nearly 40 million shells for Russia's battlefield use. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken directly named China's backing of Putin during this year's NATO summit, warning that America would not hold back in its response. The U.S. is using the Ukraine battlefield as a testing ground for China's military production capabilities. The reason the U.S. hasn't allowed Ukraine to strike inside Russia is simple. They're observing how many tanks and shells China will supply to Russia. The war is also exhausting China's factories, gauging how long they can keep up production. American surveillance shows that China's publicly known factories aren't enough to sustain Russia's needs, suggesting hidden military factories in China are secretly producing more munitions. If China fully transitions to military production, its output could multiply by 2, 3, or even 5 times. This is why the U.S. is preparing a large supply of explosives. Sinking Chinese ships quickly is crucial to prevent them from launching anti-ship missiles at the U.S., which would require costly interceptors. Instead, QUICKSINK offers a more effective method of eliminating threats at their source. China often boasts of its rising east, declining west rhetoric, claiming its ships are invincible. However, this has only prompted the U.S. to fully prepare for any confrontation, ensuring they can thoroughly defeat the PLA, just as they relentlessly bombed enemy forces in the Pacific during World War II. The QUICKSINK bomb is part of a larger system involving sea-based SM-6 and Tomahawk missiles, which have now been adopted for land-based deployment under the Typhoon system. These missiles, with ranges of up to 1,600 kilometers, are already stationed in Taiwan, the Philippines, and Okinawa, capable of striking mainland China. U.S. procurement documents indicate that over the next 5 years, the U.S. will acquire more than 800 SM-6 missiles. Despite China's objections, the U.S. has no plans to withdraw its missile systems from the Philippines and is currently testing their feasibility for use in regional conflicts. The CCP's unwavering support for Russia's aggression has drawn multiple warnings from the US, but China remains defiant. Diplomatic efforts have proven futile, and now the global order can only be achieved by confronting the CCP head-on. The US is preparing an arsenal of precision-guided bombs, determined to deal a crushing blow to what they view as the CCP's growing threat. So why haven't the US tougher policies toward China been fully implemented yet? The answer is that America must tread carefully. It needs to maintain some channels of access to China, such as consulates and embassies, to ensure future operations can continue. While China continues to do business and sell goods under stricter tariffs, the US is far from lenient, with other strategies already in place behind the scenes. The US continues to investigate China's military buildup, missile development, biological weapons production, and other expansionist ambitions, tasks that require time. Once these issues are fully uncovered and laid bare, America's response to the CCP is expected to be nothing short of astonishing in its precision. The US military isn't relying solely on the QUICKSINK bomb. A fully developed arsenal, including B-2 bombers and land, sea, and air-based strike weapons, is ready for mass production. Once production ramps up, the US and its allies could quickly catch up with China, which currently leads the missile race. This gap, however, has galvanized US public support for increased defense spending, ensuring that China's so-called rising east, declining west narrative doesn't become a reality. The Chinese military currently has no effective countermeasures against US long-range anti-ship missiles, which are notoriously difficult to intercept. Despite traveling at just 0.8 Mach, their large size, 1-ton weight, and 1,000-kilometer range make them formidable. B-1B bombers can carry up to 24 of these missiles, presenting a significant challenge to China's naval defense systems. A US bombing squadron of 16 planes, each carrying 36 missiles, would unleash 576 long-range anti-ship missiles, overwhelming China's carrier group. A formation of 16 US B-1B bombers, each carrying 24 missiles internally and 12 externally, totaling 36 per aircraft, would launch 576 missiles in a single strike. The Chinese carrier fleet would be quickly overwhelmed. While China's KJ-600 early warning aircraft can detect B-1Bs with a 400-kilometer range, B-1Bs would launch long-range anti-ship missiles from 1,000 kilometers away, far beyond the KJ-600's detection range. The long-range anti-ship missile's radar signature is only about 0.1 square meters, meaning it wouldn't be detected until within 220 kilometers. At that point, Chinese J-15 fighter jets would be deployed to intercept the long-range anti-ship missiles. Each J-15 can carry 6 medium-range air-to-air missiles, and the Chinese fleet could dispatch up to 18 J-15s, intercepting around 100 long-range anti-ship missiles. The remaining missiles would need to be handled by ship-based anti-aircraft systems. Assuming 400 missiles penetrate the fighter defenses, factors such as electronic interference, imprecise targeting, and equipment malfunctions could lead to a 20% failure rate, leaving 266 missiles needing interception. With a 70% interception rate, 380 ship-based anti-aircraft missiles would be required to intercept the remaining long-range anti-ship missiles, necessitating the mobilization of 10 destroyers or a combination of 6 destroyers and 4 freights. This simplified calculation doesn't consider the added complications of combat, where the US could deploy a large number of miniature air-launched decoys to confuse radar systems and cripple Chinese defenses. Each miniature air-launched decoy has a range of 900 kilometers, and a C-130 transport aircraft can carry over 100 decoys. If two C-130s were to coordinate with B-1Bs to release 200 decoys, Chinese fleet defenses would be further weakened. Moreover, the actual number of anti-aircraft missiles required would likely exceed the above estimate due to the need for mid-course guidance and illumination of China's HQ-9 and HQ-16 systems. In such a scenario, 2 Chinese destroyer freight squadrons would likely be fully engaged in defending against over 500 long-range anti-ship missiles. Should the US increase the number of long-range anti-ship missiles or C-130s deploying miniature air-launched decoys, the situation would become even more dire for the Chinese fleet. The US military isn't limited to bombers. They've also retrofitted Tomahawk cruise missiles for anti-ship roles, with a range of 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers. 4 retrofitted Ohio-class submarines can carry over 100 Tomahawks each, along with the U.S. Carrier Strike Group's attack submarines. The number of long-range weapons could easily surpass 1,000. A combined assault of 1 or 2,000 missiles would be too much for China's 2 carrier strike groups to handle. The US can launch long-range anti-ship missiles from outside China's air defense range, while China's YJ anti-ship missiles are far less capable. The YJ-18 has a range of 500 kilometers and is ship-launched, without the stealth feature of the long-range anti-ship missiles. The YJ-12 has a 400-kilometer range but requires an H-6 bomber to launch. U.S. Airlight Burke-class destroyers armed with 19 SM-6 missiles with a range of over 400 kilometers could easily shoot down an H-6 before it launches. As for the YJ-21, its accuracy is limited, leaving it ineffective against agile U.S. destroyers like the Arleigh Burke and cruisers like the Ticonderoga. While China's H-6 bombers have some anti-ship capabilities, their range and payload remain constrained. In a long-range engagement, the U.S. would have a significant advantage with the long-range anti-ship missile capabilities, making China's defense efforts exceedingly difficult. Lastly, despite China's naval buildup, manpower shortages mean many ships remain docked in ports, awaiting crews. This dilemma, compounded by the overwhelming threat posed by long-range anti-ship missiles, leaves China in a highly precarious situation. Let's not forget SEAL Team 6, the elite unit specializing in target elimination. They were the ones who sent bin Laden on his way without hesitation back in the day. Now, they've arrived in Taiwan, and once the PLA invades, everyone knows what the SEAL Team 6 will do. They've been secretly training in Virginia for over a year, with a range of strategies already prepared for their CCP targets, just waiting for the Taiwan conflict to ignite so they can take action. Back when they targeted bin Laden, it only took a few minutes to confirm his identity, thanks to cutting-edge biometric technology. Precision strikes on figures like Xi are never easy. In the Middle East, US forces use satellite tracking and ground agents to execute decapitation strikes in minutes. In China, however, they'll need even more advanced equipment and intelligence. Xi's recent anti-spy crackdown has created an atmosphere of fear, with even kindergarten children being taught to report spies. showing just how paranoid Xi has become. But the US won't sit idly by. They've escalated their technological tools. There was specialization that the recent drone incidents in Beijing, Heilongjiang, and Tianjin's Banhai Airport were aimed at tracking Xi's movements. These drones can monitor even the smallest movements on the ground, and the US has reportedly synchronized Xi's DNA with quantum entanglement technology. No matter where Xi tries to hide, the US is fully aware of his location. The root cause of all of this? China's stance on Russia. NATO and the US had long warned China not to support Russia, but Xi aides arrogantly dismissed Western threats. Now Xi himself and his inner circle, Wang Yi, Cai Qi, and Li Qiang, are all under scrutiny. When the time comes, none of them will escape. Intriguingly, Garmantis Lallery, a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, suggested that U.S. aircraft and warships should cross the Taiwan Strait median line and even coordinate operations with the Taiwanese Air Force. In an even more aggressive proposal, he advocated deploying the Aegis combat system, THAAD systems, and even considering the deployment of nuclear weapons in Guam and Taiwan. Lallery also proposed that the US assist Taiwan in building a submarine base on its eastern coast and support an increase in Taiwan defense budget to above 5% of its GDP. Similar to Israel, the US could share defense costs with Taiwan, and if Taiwan's budget falls short, the US would cover the gap. Colonel Lallery is no ordinary figure. He served as a US military attaché to Israel, specializing in hardline strategic topics like anti-authoritarianism, counterterrorism, and missile defense. He is currently a visiting fellow at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research, a think tank director under Taiwan's Ministry of Defense. Since Lai Ching-te took office, Lallery and a Ukrainian expert have been brought into the team to apply lessons learned from the Ukrainian battlefield to formulate new defense policies. Decades ago, China lacked both the courage and the capability to cross the Taiwan Strait. But today, the situation has entirely changed. China not only dares to expand its military, but also openly provokes, triggering the threat clauses under the Taiwan Relations Act. The military spending disparity between the two sides is evident. China's military budget soared from 20.5 billion US dollars in 1999 to 296 billion in 2023, a 15-fold increase. Taiwan's budget, on the other hand, barely doubled, leading to a severe imbalance of power across the strait. Lallery's proposal is not just a personal suggestion, but reflects guidance from the US government. Otherwise, he wouldn't be casually discussing sensitive topics like nuclear weapons deployment. According to US policy, Lallery's recommendations on what should be done are more than just proposals. They represent active preparations by the US to address China's growing threat. Clearly, China's wolf warrior diplomacy, its support for Russia, and the so-called East rises, West declines theory are pushing it into an increasingly dangerous position. The US's actions are not merely defensive, but a clear signal to the world. China's threat is no longer a distant issue. It's a direct challenge to global order, and the US has already begun preparing its response. All eyes are now on China to see if it dares to make the next move.